Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Ryan Heckman, the CEO of Rally Day Partners, and this is the Founders Journey podcast. We'll explore the heart and soul of great founders and their journey to build the company of their dreams. You will learn about new industries and business models while discovering how to apply the founder's mindset to your everyday work and life. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Founders Journey podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Heckman from Rally Day Partners, and I have the distinct pleasure of welcoming one of my first heroes that I can remember as a kid, Karl Mecklenburg. Karl was 6-time Pro Bowler, 3-time Super Bowl guy. If you're a historian of the NFL, you might say that Karl Mecklenburg was the soul of the Denver Broncos during their height, if Elway was the heart or vice versa. These were two outstanding leaders on and off the field. Karl is a hero here in Denver, and I can't believe he agreed to do our podcast. I've always thought that athletics and being an entrepreneur were very similar, at least they were for me. And the intensity of those feelings for me was higher as an athlete than in the business world. And so anytime we can welcome an athlete of Karl's stature, it's a real treat. Thank you for being here, Karl.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm looking forward to it. I like to think about the good old days. I mean, it's been more than 30 years since I played, but yeah, it's those were fun days. And yeah, John was special. John, we knew as a defense, if we just kept it close, we were going to win at the end. There was no question about that.
I'm sure there were times when he said, I got to keep it close, and Karl will make sure we keep that lead. So I'm sure he would be just as generous. But Denver's so lucky to have you here and still here. Did you grow up in Minnesota, Karl?
I did. Right? Yeah. I grew up in Minnesota. Actually, hockey was my first love. I was the goalie because I was the big kid. I could bring the pads home. But yeah, hockey was my thing. And as a matter of fact, I think it really helped me when they moved me from defensive line to linebacker, because I really understood angles from all those years of playing hockey. And so I could take the right angle that way.
Well, and that sort of began an entire new, generation of defensive men where you could play multiple positions and nobody on the offense knew where Karl was going to be.
Yeah. That and one of the ways they decide what play they're going to run or how to handle things is based on the personnel. They watch the sidelines, and when you substitute, then they call their play based on your personnel. And I could play up or down or inside or outside or whatever, and it really messed up that approach to playing offense.
And if you were to compare yourself to, I'm going to take a crack at it. I'm thinking like Micah Parsons, TJ Watt, Brian Urlacher, but I'm just a layperson. Who in the modern era today would you most likely be compared to, or who would you like to be compared to? Maybe
nobody.
There it is.
You know what? Joe Collier was so innovative. He was our defensive coordinator, and he would put you in a place that you weren't comfortable just to see how you would handle it. And he kept moving me around and putting me. I mean, there were games I played all 7 front positions, and it was just his vision as to trying to get me at the point of attack, or this is what they do statistically, and we're gonna make substitutions, but we're gonna make sure we bump Karl out or move him in or do whatever. So it was Joe's doing. I didn't even know I could play linebacker. I had never played linebacker in my life until my 3rd year in the NFL.
Yeah, that is unbelievable. Karl and I met, by the way, for those of you who are wondering, what's a also washed up former athlete from the skiing world and myself. It's been probably 30 years for me too. What do I have in common with Karl? Well, the answer is Karl is really active in the speaking circuit for businesses that are trying to get that edge that a fellow like Karl can bring them. And he does some really cool writing on LinkedIn. And I don't know how we started following each other, but that began a conversation some weeks ago. And what I was most particularly interested in was what we would call office politics in the business world, which we all know is a big word that means a lot of different things. You could say culture is another word we throw around a lot, but it's nothing in the business world compared to professional sports. And it has to do with the millions of dollars they all make on an annual basis. They're all top of their field. The stakes are high virtually every week. And so I was just sort of curious whether Karl and I could bring some of what he learned in that sort of amplified environment of professional sports in the locker room, so to speak, and whether we could help some of us who are listening to this podcast apply some of those learnings from one of the great leaders of the NFL, certainly. Never mind the Denver Broncos. But just thought there was some really cool learnings that we could explore. Karl, I know you've already said you're up to it, but is that a meaty conversation for you, given your history?
It really is. Yeah. I think people, when they think about what it's like in professional sports, they overlay their pee-wee baseball or football, or, the best athlete is going to be the best player. And that's not necessarily so. And definitely not the most valuable to the team. We had guys who were journeymen. They were much more likely to keep their job than the guys who were really flash in the pan, unbelievable athletes, but didn't know how to operate inside of a team concept. We had a guy at Barney Chavis. I was Barney's backup when I got to the Denver Broncos. He was a defensive lineman. So was I when I got drafted. Barney was kind of the keeper of the culture for the team. The guy was so inviting to the young, and a lot of the young players kind of if you're a bubble guy, if they think you're going to get cut tomorrow, they don't bother getting to know you. But Barney would. Barney would bring everybody in and talk about his past and, the upcoming team. And it was amazing to watch him. And he was this backwoods South Carolina guy. One of his favorite questions was what you would have did, which is, what is that? Well, that means that means if you're in this situation and this happens, well, what would be your response, right? But it's what you would have did from Barney, and that was Barney, and Barney played for the Broncos. I want to say 14 years, maybe it was 13, but for a long time. When he retired, they hunted him down and brought him back as a assistant weight coach. You don't need an assistant weight coach, but you need Barney in the weight room, and you need Barney in the locker room, and you need him there. And he stuck with the team for 10 more years as an assistant to the assistants, basically, just because they needed him from a strength of the team concept.
And I mean, I think what will end up happening in this conversation, I didn't script it out, but I think what's likely going to happen here is we're going to do kind of situational playmaking here, where we'll talk about like a situation that we have in business and then apply it to the much amplified version of it in a professional sports manner. And you brought up a perfect one, which is role models and leadership aside from athleticism. What was it about Barney, in your opinion, that made him so invaluable? Was it humility? Was it honesty? Was it candor? Was it relatability? Like,
yes.
What was it?
Yes, all of those things. I mean, Barney understood his role, and Barney took it seriously. I mean, he was a man of faith, a guy you can trust, a guy on the field who was untouchable. I mean, the guy never made a mistake, never got hurt. I think I had 2 plays in my first 2 years because Barney, I don't know what happened. Maybe he had to go to the bathroom or something. I don't know, but he left the field. It wasn't because he was hurt. Barney was special in so many ways, but that understanding of what it means to be a veteran player. He had gone through the Orange Crush, that whole defensive thing that was an amazing kind of people showing up out of nowhere and all of a sudden being a great team. And I'm sure he was a part of that, but I think he learned from that too, how you include everybody and rely on everybody. And he was something. I had seen a lot of football players in my time, but I had never seen a Barney just so committed to the team concept.
And in those roles that he had and you had, I mean, Karl Mecklenburg, among other attributes, is widely known to be the most aggressively humble human being that most people have ever met, by which I mean a very aggressive player, but very humble at the same time. And those are very rare people. But whether you're referring to yourself in this regard, Karl, or Barney, or other great leaders that you crossed paths with. What was the, I guess, tension between judging the rest of the teammates or evaluating them or, at times probably being disappointed in them and you were dependent upon them versus supporting those people to be better versions of themselves? I mean, how did you regulate yourself when you had someone who let you down, maybe even consistently, but you needed them to perform at the best and you wanted to beat their asses? How did you handle that being in such a high pressure field like this?
Yeah, that's a good question, Ryan. Of all the regrets I have about my football career, probably the biggest one was that I didn't aggressively mentor my backups and other players to the level I could have early enough. I should have done it earlier. Probably the last half of my career, I really understood it and wasn't threatened by my backups. It was just like, okay, I belong here. It's okay. I can bring these guys along and get them up to speed. And I think that's the tension. The tension is, do I bring in somebody who can replace me, which everybody needs to do, or am I threatened by that whole concept? So for me, that was the tension. Obviously, nobody did what I did, but it wasn't my decision. I was doing what I was told and trying to make plays. So for me, that was the biggest challenge. And I can see that in business too. As a professional speaker, we are, at least as a keynoter like I am, we're one and done for the most part. I mean, I'm going back to people I spoke for 10 years ago and they're like, well, it's a little early yet to bring them back. It's like, okay. So I go out of my way to try and find matches for those guys, for those past clients, and say, okay, well, if you're not going to bring me back, here's another example, or here's a guy who does somewhat what I do, but he also has this on top of that. And so I am finding that mentorship piece is just as important in my business and in other businesses too.
I mean, what were you, 12 years with the Broncos, give or take?
12 years, yeah. 12 years.
And when you were doing that, did you feel more like an individual contributor or did you feel like a leader? Because like from the outside, look, I was just a young kid. Very impressive.
I got a guy with gray in his beard telling me I was a young kid. What?
Well, sorry, Karl.
You're killing me, man.
It happens to the best of us.
I know what you're asking. I was a leader, and I took that seriously. I was the player rep for the union. I was a captain on the team. I was a guy calling the plays in the huddle. Shoot, I had gastroenteritis, lost 20 pounds. They told me, you got to play. Nobody else can make the calls. So I'm out there. So yeah, I was somebody that saw himself and others saw as a leader, no question.
And just trying to get to the feeling of what that felt like. Did you feel like you had to earn that every day by your athleticism and by like what you did on the field? Or did you feel like you earned that in different ways? And did that change as you, I guess, matured on the team?
Yeah, I think the best way I can answer that, Ryan, is I got injured. I broke my thumb, had surgery on it. They had to wait like 3 weeks for the cut to heal. And then I played again, and then they broke the pin in the bone and everything again. And so I missed 7 games one year. That's the only time I did miss, but I missed 7 games that year. It was 88. I was in the training room. But I understood that this was a different type of opportunity for leadership, and I could really work hard in the rehab and meet a lot of people that I hadn't met. I hadn't spent a lot of time with offensive guys. I went out of my way to really reach out to everybody on the team, and that's something I'd seen Elway do for years, and I wanted to emulate that. So that was something that I worked on. I developed friendships across the team, across the races, across the ages, across everything. And I think it helped ultimately as my leadership position moved forward.
Well, I mean, you made a choice, right? I mean, you were obviously injured. You could have felt like a victim of circumstance. You obviously could have gotten a little insecure because you were missing games, missing time, younger guys around you, etc. And you chose to double down on relationship building. And what a cool way to do it in the training room where you are with people from different sides of the ball.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Great story. Was there anyone else besides Barney during your 12 years that you would say was an exemplary leader that you came across?
Oh yeah. I mean, the Broncos were full of leaders, but I had a speaking engagement, and I open up the floor for questions regularly. If I have enough time, I'll open up the floor for questions. And somebody asked me a question I never heard before. He asked me, "Who was your best teammate?" I've heard who's your favorite teammate, or who's the best athlete you played with, or who was the hardest to play against. All these things, but I never heard that. Who was your best teammate? And the guy I came up with was Gary Kubiak. Gary was a rookie the same year I was. He was a 7th rounder. I was a 12th rounder. And Gary was a stud now. Athletically, Gary was an 8-time All-State athlete in Texas. I mean, this is Texas, where it's Friday Night Lights, I guess it is. But yeah, I mean, just an unbelievable athlete. He was All-State as a junior and a senior in basketball, in track, in baseball, and in football across the whole state, right? So this unbelievable athlete, he gets drafted by the Broncos. Back then, they didn't have rules as far as practicing in the off season, so the rookies are out there practicing like all summer. And Gary's running first team, and the word is he's going to have a chance to be a starter. I mean, he was that good. And we got to training camp. Mr. Kaiser wanted to sell the team, so he traded for John Elway, and Gary wasn't going to play. And Gary knew he wasn't going to play. And instead of taking it personally, he learned how to lead from the sidelines. He ran the scout team against us, which means he pretends he's the offense for the other team so we can get ready for that team, right? And most scout team quarterbacks don't study at all. They're not looking at that at all. The coach comes out with a big sheet of cardboard with a play written on it, and he looks at it and he runs that play. It's, Gary would study the other team's quarterback. He'd study their receivers, how they ran routes, where they would be, when they would be there, who he would throw to. That he really went deep on it, and he was ready if John got hurt too. He developed that. I think he was with us for 9 years and went on to become a coach, and all that studying paid off for him, right? So he won a Super Bowl with San Francisco, and then he came back with the Broncos and won another Super Bowl, and then won the Super Bowl with the Broncos as a head coach. But his approach was team oriented. It was just because he knew, he was going to hold for the field goals. He was going to run the scout team, and he was going to cheer us on. He used to come up to me before every game and say, "Meck, hold up the class." So we were drafted the same year. So obviously that was part of it. But the other part of it was, "Karl, I've worked all week to get you ready for this game. I'm going to be on the sidelines with a baseball cap and a clipboard. Go out there and hold up the class. Do what you can do." That was Gary. I'm sure he had those traditions with other players too, but he was such a big piece of the team that nobody ever got to see, right? He hardly ever got a chance to play.
Yeah, but his arc after he retired is unmatched. You might say he was the most elite player to become an elite coach. There aren't many of them in the world.
Yeah, he's a special guy for sure.
All right, well, let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about losing. And
that sounds fun.
You don't remember any of that.
Yeah, well, I just watched the Avalanche
last night. Yeah, that was rough. Here's the context. A couple things. First of all, I was an Olympic skier, and I was in my first Olympics. I was 17 years old, and in that sport, you've got dozens of pairs of skis, and you have them for different conditions, and it's a pretty scientific situation. And all my fellow athletes had serial numbers for their skis. They label them 001 or whatever, 002, etc. And I named every pair of my skis. I probably had over 40 pairs of skis after Denver Broncos.
Oh, wow.
And I had them all. All the greats. And I grew up watching this game and clear through your career. And all of my skis were named after offensive players because I wanted to go out and win. Okay. And right. I had a member of
if the other team doesn't score, I've found they don't win.
So, but it goes with the stereotype, okay? And so I had a CBS reporter say to me, like, walk me through all these skis. I had Vance Johnson, I got Elway, obviously. And he's like, "Why don't you have any defensive players?" And I said, "I've got one." And he said, "Who?" I said, "Karl Mecklenburg." And he said, why the hell do you have Karl Mecklenburg among all these offensive players? And I was only 17. I said, you know why? I said, because there is no one who lost as well as Karl Mecklenburg.
So you expected to lose when you wore the
Actually,
Mecklenburg?
funny enough, I was thinking about this morning. My fastest, best pair of skis was actually Shannon Sharp. Okay. And that was a little later in my career. But the pair of skis where I always performed my best was the number 77 Karl Mecklenburg skis. And
Nice.
It had to do with the fact that when you're an athlete and you know that it's more than likely you're going to lose, because in individual sports, you've got 100 other competitors. And so like just dealing with the negativity of losing before you even started competing was something that you had to overcome. And there was some confidence that I got. And so I always performed my best with your pair of skis because I thought to myself, what's the worst thing that can happen? The worst thing that can happen is I lose, but I walk off that field looking like Karl Mecklenburg. And for those of you who may not have watched him walk off the field after a loss, you know what Karl Mecklenburg looked like? And he looked the same whether he won or he lost. He looked like a gladiator coming off the Coliseum every single time, and you couldn't tell whether he won or lost by the way he walked off that field. And so for me, it was just a great role model for how to lose with maximum respect for yourself in the situation and come back and fight the next day. Tell me about where that comes from inside of you, where at least from me, like Joe, Monday morning armchair quarterback guy, like where does that strength come from? Where you can overcome a loss with so much dignity. Where does that come from?
That's a good question. I have a way to approach things that allows me to be honest and forgiving with myself after a win or after a loss or after a good play or after a bad play. I prepare thoroughly, perform decisively, evaluate honestly, and adjust accordingly. So whether the team wins, whether I win on that particular play, I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at it and see how I can get better. And I think maybe that's it. I wanted to win bad, right? I did. But when you lose, a lot of times when you fail, you can make a much bigger jump afterwards than when you win. All of a sudden it's like, oh, this is what I've been doing. All of a sudden now I paid for it. But how do I get rid of that and put something better in that place and move forward? So failure is just part of it when you're a competitor, no question. But it's a part that allows you to get better and allows you to win and allows you to become great eventually if you follow that pattern of preparing thoroughly, performing decisively, evaluating honestly, and adjusting accordingly.
And that strength that I saw through my, at the time, 19-inch Sony television.
Black and white.
No, it wasn't quite that bad.
Well,
it does go with the beard, I suppose. But, my brothers and I had two brothers, and we would cry when the Broncos would lose. My dad did not like football, but the three of us, we only had 3 television stations because we lived up in the mountains of Colorado. And so we didn't have ABC. We had CBS, NBC, and then Channel 2, which was kind of like where you watch old sitcoms or Leave It to Beaver. But when it came to Bronco Day, it was a whole day. And we just, I don't know how to explain it, but when I think about you walking off the field with my 2 brothers and I just bawling, it was left an indelible mark on me. How did you walk in the locker room when I couldn't see? And how did you feel a responsibility to give your framework and that sense of objectivity to a loss? Did you feel an obligation to show up a certain way when you got back in the locker room for guys that weren't as good at losing?
No, everybody prepares their own way. And I know it's the same in skiing. There's some guys you don't talk to before they race. Jim Ryan was one of my roommates with the Broncos through the years and a great guy, amazing player considering he tore his ACL in college and played his whole 10 years in the NFL with no ACL, and a very bright guy. But he had to put on a game face. don't talk to me. Right? I got to work up this anger or this whatever it was for him to, and like I'd come to the sidelines and forget that it's Jim and, talk about my son or something and then go back out and make another play. But that's the way I handled it. It was part of life. I loved the game. To have the chance to go out and play an NFL game, win or lose, give your full effort, come off the field knowing you did everything you possibly could to win that game, worn out, right? And okay, it's over. I did what I could, and either we win or we lose. For me, I wanted to win more than anything, but I was also honest and forgiving with myself. So if we lost, it was like, okay, well, we'll look at the film, we'll figure it out, and we'll be better next week. And we got to get to the playoffs, so we'll find a way there. And so that was my approach.
How many days did it take you? Like, I'm assuming most games are Sunday, obviously. So like Sunday night, you probably beat yourself up a little bit. Like Monday, were you ready, or Tuesday, were you ready to rock it again, or like did you bounce back?
Was I ready? Yeah. The way it works in the NFL, you come in for film study, check in with the trainer, do a little weightlifting on Monday, and then Tuesday you have off, and then Wednesday you start practicing for the next team. So you got a couple of days to get over it. Yeah, I'd definitely be ready by Wednesday for the next team, and usually, there are still plays that I run through in my mind, that and it's not the good ones. It's the one where I'm trying to cover the tight end from Dallas, and they throw the ball like a quarter of an inch away from my fingers, I would have tipped it. Or like there was one play, we were playing the Chiefs at Mile High Stadium, and I made a great move on the guard, pass rushing, and Montana's just drifting away from me, and I'm, I still think maybe if I used my left hand instead of my right hand to swing at him, I could have tipped the ball, but he threw a touchdown pass and we lost. And I mean, stuff like that just, it's still there.
Yeah.
And I believe if you're a driven athlete, those are the things that ultimately you're going to remember, which is kind of sad.
Yeah, I guess it's part of the deal.
What runs through my mind when I'm asleep.
All right. I want to pick on a word you use, like performing decisively. Like, what does that mean to you? Because I thought you were going to say like perform aggressively, for example. You could have used that word. You could have used a lot of different words. Why decisively? And now we're going to get into winning a little bit, but like, assuming that you did your prep and you performed decisively and you won, what does decisiveness have to do with it necessarily?
Yeah, Ryan, I was the 310th pick of the draft.
Number 12th round, right?
12th round, yeah. Yeah. So I was 20 guys away from Mr. Irrelevant based on my athleticism. I run a 4.940. For those of you who don't follow football, that's really slow. But early on in my career, I found out if I could take the first step in the right direction before anybody else did, all the angles would change in my favor. And that's not just in football. That's decisiveness. That's understanding your assignment and allowing yourself to go when it's time to go. And there were plays we'd watch on film, and we everything got filmed and everything got evaluated, and you'd be in the meeting room with the other linebackers and the coaches running the plays back and forth. And Merle Moore, our defensive linebacker coach, would be, what'd you see on that? And it's like, I don't know, but I knew what it was going to be. And it was, one guy leaning a little bit. They're big, fat offensive linemen. They got to lean a little bit, right? They can't just play it straight. So you see, you notice things, you figure things, and you let yourself go. Again, I'm sure it's the same in ski racing, because I have ski raced, and not in anything like you have, but I have, and you got to go. You can't. It's not. Assuming that this and this and this. No, it's go. You're always wrong if you don't go.
I think I think fear of losing and indecisiveness go a little bit hand in hand, if I may.
Definitely.
Because like in the business world, let's go in there for a second. I notice the best leaders I've worked with, and I've seen some really good ones. There's one in our office right now, Mike Bullinger. He's from Minnesota, by the way. When you're so scared of losing, you have a hard time on those 51-49% decisions. And they can just sit there on your metaphorical desk for a long time. And every day that goes by, they're perishable moments, And I noticed that people who aren't very good at losing aren't as confident and decisive in things. And I've often wondered if they're related. And in your case, given that they happen in sequence, I might suggest that was one of your greatest strengths.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you had to describe my career with one word, it would be decisive. That's what separated me from other guys, because athletically, I that wasn't my thing. I was strong. Now I'll handle that side of it, but the speed part of it wasn't there. But if you have to run 40 yards as a linebacker, you're in big trouble anyway, right? That's not a good play.
Until they brought you into pass coverage, and that sometimes was a problem. You played with Steve Atwater, didn't you? And when he was free safety,
I did.
So he probably had your back if you were in deep trouble.
Yeah, and Dennis Smith.
Oh,
Dennis Smith was Steve before Steve. Yeah, I did. And when I think about other guys in the NFL that I know, or even with the Broncos that I know, who decisiveness was their game, Peyton Manning. I mean, Peyton Manning was not an athlete. Have you seen him run? So what was it that made him special? I met Peyton at first time I met him was at a golf event. They have golf events at the Super Bowl every year, and they bring in past players who had good careers, and then they bring in the rookies, the guys that are just coming in the draft. So this is Peyton's last year at Tennessee, and he comes into this event at the Super Bowl and comes up to me, and I didn't know who Peyton was. I didn't follow college football at the time, and he said, "Oh, Mr. Mecklenburg, I love what you did for the Broncos. You had over 1,000 tackles and more sacks than anybody on the team, and you were a captain and you were a player rep." And then he started talking about my University of Minnesota career. Peyton was 2 years old when I played at the University of Minnesota. He hadn't seen me play, but what he had done is he had gone to a library. I mean, this is before Google. He had gone to a library. First, he contacted the guy in charge of the golf event, found out what players were going to be there, went to the library and studied up on us. And that was Peyton. He was going to be prepared in every situation. And because of that, he could be decisive. I don't know if you remember his retirement speech, but he said it 4 or 5 times. Nobody's going to out-prepare me. That was him. It was all about decisiveness, and because of that, he knew where to go with the ball, and he went before anybody else would have, and it just kills you as a defense when they just start picking you apart like that.
Well, I mean, that's another kind of clue under the clue, which was that these steps that you went through. If you don't mind, would you do it again, Karl? Like
prepare thoroughly, perform decisively. So basically, the hay's in the barn. I'm not going to be thinking I'm going. When it's time to go, I'm going. So prepare thoroughly, perform decisively, evaluate honestly, and adjust accordingly.
Okay. So the other clue here is the thing you just said about Peyton, which was when you prepare thoroughly, it means you can also be more decisive because you're not thinking about the X's and O's as much anymore. You're thinking about that offensive lineman tipping his body a certain way and letting your maybe more subconscious mind take over because your conscious mind knew exactly what you were supposed to do at exactly that time.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yep. And you can switch that over to business just in preparation for a sales call, for example, or, staying up to date on all the newest stuff. I'm a member of the National Speakers Association, like you said, and I go out of my way to make sure that I attend a lot of meetings just because I want to be up to date. I want to know what's going on out there. I want to be connected. I need to have a feeling of preparedness when I go into a sales meeting, which we do all the time as speakers, right?
Of course.
So yeah, it's definitely transferable, that whole concept.
And then the evaluate honestly, I think, lines up fairly well with conventional wisdom. I would suggest, though, that those of us who hate losing, those of us who might even be a little embarrassed by some of the things that contributed to that loss, as is more common in my personality. The honesty thing, classic, easier said than done, because
Yeah, that's where most people lose it. It's funny when I speak, I'll sign autographs and pose for photos, do all this stuff with people, and they'll have comments about my presentation, and it's amazing how many times that is the one. That's I have teamwork, courage, dedication, desire, honesty, and forgiveness, goal setting, these things that I talk about. But that they're like, oh yeah, I've heard that other stuff, but I haven't really thought about that honesty and forgiveness piece. That's important.
well, and
Yes,
maybe the forgiveness thing allows you to be more honest, because it's sort of like, yeah, I effed up, and that's okay, but I really want to get surgical as to, why I effed up. But if you're not forgiving yourself as part of the process here, you're probably not as willing to look in the mirror, right? Because it's
yeah,
embarrassing.
right. Yeah, it's not comfortable to beat yourself up. It's not comfortable to say, yeah, it's my fault. I'm sorry, but in relationships, in business, in sports, in community, in any part of life, you're going to make mistakes. And the only way you can keep from making the same mistake over and over and over again is admitting it, forgiving yourself, figuring out a different way to do it, and going from there. It's not comfortable, but it's life. That's how it works.
And the final step, tell us about that. So after you've done your evaluation and you've been honest.
Yeah, adjust accordingly. Adjust accordingly is this isn't acceptable. I'm not serving my clients the way I should be serving my clients. So I gotta adjust. I gotta do it something a little bit different. One of the things I love about professional speaking is how close it is to professional football. You prepare thoroughly, you perform decisively. It's the same stuff. You prepare for that opponent, you prepare for that client, you perform at a high level for a short period of time, you evaluate what went on, you throw out what didn't go well, you repeat what did go well, you get ready for the next client. I mean, it's sports. And I love that part of it. I'm a performer. I like the stage time better than I like the sales talks and that kind of stuff. But it's still very, very similar to what football was for me.
Yeah, and I guess adjust accordingly is different than try harder next time. I think there's a temptation where the most blunt force feedback we give ourselves is like, I just didn't try hard enough, which is kind of bullshit, because I mean, God knows you go on an NFL field, and that you're probably trying pretty hard. The difference between you trying hard and trying harder is probably 0.001 different outcome. And so, how often was it like reverse engineering and going to preparation versus effort, or did you try hard enough, Karl? I mean, was that
Yeah, no, effort was never a question. If you time a professional football game or any football game from snap to whistle and just leave all the other stuff out, it's less than 10 minits of actual action.
It feels that way when I go to a game in person, by the way. There's no freaking commercials. I'm like, this game is so freaking slow now.
Yeah, so I played defense. So that's 5 minutes of action over 3 hours, right? It's how can you not go full speed on every play? I mean, I don't, that's why big fat guys can do it. but,
yeah, you could say the same thing about business though, because like in a typical day, I've actually thought about this, like how many times do I have to be on where if I mess up, the stakes are high and it's going to be not catastrophic, but very bad. And then how many times do I have to show up and be my very best to produce the outcome I want? In a typical day or week, it's not very much, really. Right. I mean, it's all the things that go into that particular moment where you're spending 95% of your effort for 5% of output. But that's kind of brutal, right? I mean, NFL. Because like you break down your 5 minutes, Karl, like how many of those were you actually on the ball or in a place of making a play that's going to change the outcome? I mean, maybe you could argue like that place you were was avoided by somebody, so it went somewhere else. But like of those 5 minutes, how many minutes or seconds were you actually like making a play that mattered?
Yeah, wow. Not a whole lot. But you got to be there. You got to be present. You got to do everything you can to allow your teammate to make the play. for me, that the adjustments I had to make at the line of scrimmage, making sure everybody's lined up right, making sure I'm not being obvious with what the play is, doing the things that I had to do to give us a better chance to be on the ball when it's time to be on the ball. So yeah, I'm not necessarily making the plays, but if the coverage isn't there, I'm not sacking the quarterback. And if I'm not pressuring the quarterback, you're not going to get an interception, right? It's all interrelated.
Well, let's talk about some situations. Let's talk about two different people in the locker room. And let's assume this person's a defensive player because you would have more interaction with them during practice than in the film room or whatever. Let's talk about the guy who has a huge amount of talent, but's kind of a punk. And
Ricky Hunley.
Ricky Hunley. That's a good one. That's a name for the guy. Sorry, Ricky. If you're listening to the Founders Journey podcast, forgive my guest, Karl. He's kind of a jerk. All right, let's talk about him for a second. Let's pick on him because we have a Ricky Hunley in every one of our companies. In every company in America, there's one of these guys. What did you do to help Ricky?
Wow. I don't know that I did. I tried. Ricky was an unbelievable college football player. He was a first round draft pick by the Broncos, just a great nose for the ball, but he refused to, I guess, prepare. That he was not prepared. He would suck up on every fake. I mean, and you talk to him and you talk, like, Ricky, this is what what are you seeing? And he would pat his back pocket because he was making more money than us. It was frustrating, and his career ended quickly. Ironically, he's coaching college football.
That's God. That's God punishing that
dude. So yeah, but it was so frustrating because one year we split time. I mean, I would see things from the sidelines that were just so obvious to me because I had prepared and gotten, and I'd be yelling out there, what? They're throwing to the tight end, Ricky.
A little late, Karl.
Trying to get him.
A little late for that.
Like he had no idea what was going on.
All right, let's talk about the other guy then. Let's talk about the guy who maybe, like you, maybe not 12th round. That's pretty bad. Let's think he comes in 9th or 10th or something like that. But comes in, not a ton of talent, but works hard and is a good presence. How do you help that guy make it and get better quick enough where they remain relevant athletically, quote unquote, putting points on the board? How do you help that person have the patience in the process to give them the chance to develop into what you see inside of them in terms of their greatness?
Yeah, Greg Cragen was drafted by the Broncos same year as another nose guard, and he got cut the first year, but they brought him back the second year to training camp. And so for the rest of his career, if he said my rookie year, I'd say, which rookie year?
Okay, so you give him shit. Is that your secret sauce, Karl?
Oh yeah, that's my leadership. But Greg was unbelievable at. Nose guard is a tough position, and that's what I was drafted as a nose guard too, truthfully. And you got to take on two blocks so the linebacker's free to the ball, and that's what you're doing, play after play after play. And he was just uncanny with his ability to. I mean, he was like yoga man, so flexible, get all twist around and two guys, and just a selfless player that allowed me to have the success that I had. And when there was the expansion in the league, they added two teams to the league, and they had to not protect a few players. One of the guys that they didn't protect was Greg, and Greg ended up in Carolina. And Carolina's both of their inside linebackers went to the Pro Bowl the next year because Greg was doing what Greg did. I mean, he was an unbelievable team guy in that way. And what can I do to support a guy like that? Let him know how I feel about him. Let him know that, anything I'm doing is because he's doing what he's doing. And so that was something. Yeah, I was his buddy. I gave him a hard time, but that's part of being a guy's buddy in the NFL.
And that's also giving some levity because, that job is brutal. The one you had, really tough. How does levity play in all this? I mean, I think it was one of the coaches I really admire. I forget which one, but he said, "I don't want a comedian in the huddle." Were there moments, Karl, when you provided some levity to your teammates because it was so heavy, or was that just not cool?
Now that was during the week, maybe on the sidelines during the game, but not. Yeah, not the huddle is business. This is, like you say, or like I said, it's 5 minutes. You don't have time to be messing around. But the guys that I know that were great players, all had that in them. All had that locker room fun, messing around, loved each other in a way that only people that have seen each other at their best and seen each other at their worst can love each other. And it was, yeah, those connections are lifelong connections. Actually, in a couple weeks here, the Broncos are having their alumni golf tournament, and I'll be telling the same stories as all the other guys. It's a blast, and it's because we have that connection that we've gone through so much together.
I understand that. I understand that very intimately. Let's talk about flow and love for a moment here. Like the love of each other, the support of each other, and this like ethereal thing that we call flow, where a team just feels like they're all at the same time performing better than maybe they should and feeding off of each other. I mean, we hear about this sometimes. Where do you think that comes from? Like this state of flow when you have felt it in your career?
The zone, the zone thing, yeah, yeah. It's a step beyond decisiveness. It's a step where you're anticipating things that haven't even started yet. I've been there a couple times, and it's just unbelievable. It's everything slow motion, and yeah, it's a cool place to be. But it doesn't happen without trust. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen around fear of failure. That's for sure. Yeah, it's the next step above decisiveness. You're so well prepared, and things just start happening to get on this roll.
Yeah, I think what's perplexing for me is like in an individual sport, I could sort of manufacture that feeling. I mean, in some ways, I had a routine that helped me get there. By the way, a lot of it was releasing my fear of failure. That was a big part of it, but I could control that. What's been so interesting to me is like in a team environment, particularly like football, when you guys are spread out all over the damn place and things are moving fast. Basketball team, you can see it maybe more obviously, but is that state of being, is that happening like right before the game, during playing time, or is that happening kind of Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday? Or when does that trust establish?
No, it's tied. Yeah, it's tied to adrenaline. I'm convinced anyway. It's performance. It's not during preparation. It's not watching film. It's not running through 7-on-7 pass coverage or what. It's not. It's game time. It's the lights are on, and you're amped up, and so from that standpoint, it's hard to replicate in the real world. Again, one of the reasons I'm a professional speaker is I get that adrenaline that I miss so much from football, and I'll find myself in the zone up on the stage too. It's not just a football thing, but it's an interesting thing, and yeah, it's definitely in my mind anyway, definitely tied to the adrenaline of the moment.
Last exploration, and then I thought maybe we'd just do some rapid fire stuff. But another challenge I see among athletes and business people is trying to be good at home and be a good father or a good mother, a good husband, wife, good partner, a good family member, maybe your brother, sister, mom, dad, whatever, like all that stuff. And what I'm convinced is required obsession with the work thing. And in your line of work, I mean, your stuff started happening in, let's say, at camp in Greeley. I'm picturing you in Greeley by yourself in a non-air conditioned
Yeah, five
5 brutal
weeks
weeks. They don't do that anymore. Thank God.
of stink.
Anyway, so like all that stuff starts, and then you're on basically, if you're lucky, through January, February, whatever. I mean, that's not an inconsequential amount of time during a typical year. You can't wait
Yeah,
for the off season to say I'm sorry to your wife because you effed up. or take your son to do X, Y, or Z or whatever. So how did you figure out, Karl, over those 12 seasons, how you could be good in both of these places with the caveat that more than likely you were pretty damn obsessed as it relates to your football life?
I don't know that I was great at that. My wife is a saint.
Very, very well.
Put it that way. I remember when I get home after the season and I'd be hanging around and I'd ask my kids to do something. They say, I got to go ask mom. It's like, okay, like, who are you? I got to go ask mom. So yeah, it's a challenge. It sure is. I mean, we were dark to dark daily. And when you got an injury and that happens a lot, you're even there more. So even on your off days, you got to be in there getting treatment and doing the things you have to do. So I wish I had been better at that than I was. Truthfully, I was a football player. That was my identity. My wife was a mom and was great at that and still is great at that. But it was divide and conquer because I wasn't there. And we went through some hard times because of it. But we survived. Kathy and I had our first date when we were 15. I've known her my whole life. And so we've been married for 42 years now or whatever. But yeah, it's, no, I lucked into, fortunately her name ends with N and the partners in chemistry lab were alphabetical. So we were paired up and that was that.
How old were your kids when you were at your peak?
My oldest son, Luke, was, I want to say 4, 5, 6, something like that. My youngest wasn't born yet. My daughter was just a baby when I retired. So yeah, we spread them way out. So that was a good plan anyway.
Did you feel like Luke understood your football life to the extent that you wanted him to? In other words, did you feel like he was proud of his dad when you got home, or was he too young to fully appreciate like what was going on there?
Yeah, you know what? I don't know. He liked going to the games. He would go to the games with Kathy, and he'd come in the locker room afterwards and take the tape and tape everybody's locker all closed and do stuff like that. He was just messing around. I don't know. I think he enjoyed the idea of people recognizing his dad on one hand, and on the other hand, it was tough for him just as far as he's not a big guy, and it's like that people were like, what happened to you? I thought you were Mecklenburg's kid. I mean, he was actually a very good football player at Kent Denver. He was second team All State, and he was recruited to play college football. But he's a musician. That was his deal. So he wanted to be a musician.
Well, it's also hard. I mean, for you guys living in, I mean, Denver's a pretty small town as it turns out, and
I'm half as small as it is now when I was playing.
I mean, dinners. I'm thinking you guys are out and people want to talk to Karl Mecklenburg and you're trying to interrupt dinner. I mean, all this stuff, it's got to be brutal. How did you deal with, I guess, not becoming arrogant? Like, was that, I mean, the story, the stereotype of you is, I mean, there's two words that you always come to mind. One was like the Swiss Army knife of a defensive player. You hear that all the time. But the other one is just kind of this like reputation for being quote unquote blue collar. I have to assume that humility and arrogance were something that you still had to fight despite your reputation. Otherwise, Karl, how did you deal with that other than your wife keeping you in check?
Thank you for recognizing that. I had arrogant times. I had some issues that way early on in my career, and it became clear to me anyway that it's harder to be mean than it is to be nice. At least it was for me. I don't want to be upset my whole life. If I'm upset, I'm going to go take it out on the football field. I'm not going to take it out on the fans. I didn't have, and I wasn't ever the golden boy. I never was. I was a JV football player as a junior in high school. I didn't even make the varsity team. I was on a partial scholarship to a Division II school for 2 years, and they took away my partial scholarship, and I left and I walked on at the University of Minnesota. And I was the 310th pick of the draft. I was not that guy, so I was fortunate in that I didn't develop those habits young and early.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking the opposite end of the spectrum. It would be silly not to bring this up, but the opposite end of the spectrum would have been John Elway. I mean, he grew up being the trophy athlete, even down to how he ended up in Denver was kind of bratty, if you think about it. So, I mean, you watched him, obviously, over those 12 years, totally different dude. Do you think he was as aggressively humble as you were? And how did he handle it then? Or I guess maybe you can speak for him, but
Well, John was a great teammate. John was a great leader. John went out of his way to build relationships with teammates. He be at the Bible study, and he'd be out drinking with the wild guys, and he'd be out messing around with offensive line. He was everywhere anybody was, and that was important to him. One of the things that I noticed about John in our lunchroom. Our lunchroom is like a middle school lunchroom with round tables, and the same guys sat at the same table every day, except John. John would sit at a different table very often, and he did. And I asked him about it, and he said, I need to be close to my teammates, and he needs to get to know them. He understood what his responsibility was within that team concept. Now, I wouldn't want to be in a personal relationship with him off the field necessarily, but on the field, in the locker room with his guys, he was all business, and he was very intuitive about what it meant to be the kind of leader he needed to be.
those are incredibly good attributes. Karl, let's do one more kind of favorite highlight of your career and low light of your career.
All right. Favorite highlight of my career.
I'll give you a multiple choice on the low lights. We can talk about the Giants, Washington, the 49ers. We could start there if you want to.
Okay, we want to go with the low light first.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we set a record for the biggest loss in the Super Bowl against the 49ers. I was injured in the first quarter. I got a leg whip, which means the blocker pretends he missed you, and then he swings his legs around and hits you in the knees, and he tore cartilage in both of my knees. I was going to the Pro Bowl. I had already invited my family to the Pro Bowl. It was right after that game, so I'm I'm going out to the Pro Bowl with obviously not playing in it, but it was that not being able to be there and make a difference, and at least keep us from giving up more points than has ever been given up in a Super Bowl would have been nice. So getting injured during the Super Bowl was really my low light.
And in the first quarter, and then having to fly all the way home.
And they were a great team. They were probably going to beat us anyway, but to just not even be a factor was hard.
And did you know at the time it was probably going to be your last, or did you still have some confidence there was more in the tank in the next couple?
It was still a good team. I mean, 2 years later, we lost to Buffalo in the same score as the Broncos lost this year to Seattle. It was 10-6, I think. And we were going down to score and to win Elway got sick or something. I think he went to the White House or something. I don't know. Somehow he got sick. And so Kubiak was playing really well. And we marched down, and Steve Sewell fumbled the ball on like the 10-yard line, and we never got the ball back. And that was the end of the game. But yeah, we were close. We just never. And there are so many guys who play in the NFL who don't ever get a sniff of the playoffs. It's amazing. The average career is 3 years. You're in, you're out. So to have those three opportunities to play in the Super Bowl was awesome. And on the one hand, losing the way we lost in all three of those was disappointing, especially for kids crying watching the television.
Thank you.
They're in their family room. But to have those opportunities was really special. I wouldn't give those up for anything. A specific play, wow, probably my first game with the Broncos. I had a sack on Mark Malone playing against the Steelers in Candlestick Park, and we're going in there, and I'd never gone to a pro football game before that game. that was my first experience with pro football, so that was pretty cool. And then I got people make assumptions about you based on, your draft status, and a little white guy on the end of the out there playing defensive end pass rush, and this tackle didn't think I was going to beat him with speed, and I ran right past him. It was the only time in my career I heard a tackle yell, "Look out!" to the quarterback as I blew by him and sacked the quarterback. So yeah, that was a special one, just because it was a first, right? It was that having that dream come true of, what, I do belong here. I'm gonna be around here for a while.
What did you do, and how did you feel when Elway finally won his Super Bowl in '90?
I was at the game, and I was so happy. I mean, we are not the Buffalo Bills. We're not the Minnesota Vikings. We're the Broncos. We win Super Bowls. So to have that, and anybody who was connected with the team, I think, felt that sudden, like, this cloud came off over your head. It was like, oh man, we're champions. And so that was bad. I bet you probably felt that same thing watching that game. Just all of a sudden, wow, how can it be? See, my dad had been a Viking fan for years and years and years, and then he was a Bronco fan when I was playing, and he thought he was the curse. It's my fault. And so that was really fun for me too, to see how he reacted in that moment.
Yeah, no, that was. I can get teary-eyed real fast thinking about that one. It was way more than '99. I mean, the next season it was sort of just way different. What advice to end this time together, Karl, would you give people who are in the grind, maybe showing up 12th round of their own particular draft and want to win a Super Bowl, but are, going through those tough times that are required to get to those outcomes? I mean, what would you, if you could put your arm around them, what would you say to them?
Hang in there. What makes people great, what makes organizations great, is what they do beyond the job description. Yeah, the job description is the given, the grind. You just mentioned the grind. You're in the grind. I understand that. That's ticket to entry. For me, it's what you do beyond. And the other thing is thankfulness. I had the opportunity a couple years ago. I went to Randy Gradishar's induction in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I flew directly from there back to Denver, where the NSA was having its CSP CPAE dinner. And some of my friends were going into the Hall of Fame there too. And you're only given like 8 minutes to talk about what's important to you in those situations. And every single person in both of those rooms went right to who I'm thankful for, what I'm thankful for, how I thought, well, yeah, they're great. They've done amazing things. They've had great opportunities. Of course, they're thankful. But then I thought, you know what? What if it's thankfulness that allows you to get there? What if that's the thing where you value opportunities and you take advantage of them because you're so thankful to have that opportunity. So be thankful. If you want to be great, be grateful.
Well, I'm grateful for this time. You can only imagine if I could have talked to myself when I was 8 years old, cheering for you and crying with you when you lost. And to fast forward to today, even being able to meet you has been a great honor of mine, Karl. And thanks for everything that you did during my childhood. Thanks for what you've done for the city of Denver. Thanks for what you did for this franchise that we love. And thank you for teaching me how to win and lose, as a young person. Thank you for it all. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. There's a lot of thank you stuff going on, huh? We're listening to ourselves. Great job. It's fun to be interviewed by somebody who's interested. So somebody who knows my past and that kind of thing. So thank you.
Well, thanks for touching our lives. Take care, Karl.